and welcome to the Nomiki Show. I'm Nomiki Konst. We are 26 days away from the last day of voting, aka Election Day. And this country is in crisis, right? The president and the Republican Party are flailing in office and also on their campaign. But are Biden and Harris actually stepping up to this moment? That's what I'm wondering today. You could feel Harris struggling last night. How all her training has left her unprepared for the scale of what is needed right now. She is from that generation of Democratic politicians raised on packaging and sound bites and triangulation. Candidates who make progressive sounding statements while the corporate cash pours in. Pence may be an aged-out neo-Nazi Ken doll, but he is no dope. The debate may have been more civil last night than last week's and had more substance, but for a Democratic campaign that is pounding the Trump-Pence ticket in the polls. I couldn't actually tell because it was just about style. That's the difference. For that campaign, the Democratic campaign right now that is literally annihilating the Trump-Pence ticket in every poll, every swing state poll, every national poll, I really didn't get that feeling last night. For instance, Pence baited Harris into a competition for who was less environmentally friendly. Her statements barely even made sense. We have an existential climate crisis, but no, Mr. Pence, Joe Biden and I are not against fracking. And let me say that several more times and then brand it into a viral tweet. Are we selling those bumper stickers yet and the t-shirts yet? Give me a break. Come on. Forget shopping list politics. Stop worrying about offending donors. Think big, not small. This country is in crisis. There are only two issues in this campaign right now. Only two issues that will swing voters in the middle. Only two issues that will mobilize voters on the left. Only two issues that will bring disgusted Republicans across the divide. Those two issues are the pandemic and the economy. And every single time the flailing Republicans try a new line of attack, throw stuff against the wall, Democrats everywhere should stay focused, in control, and remind the country that they're going to be the party that feels the country's pain. Remind the country that they understand that we the people, what we the people are facing, and that this administration exacerbated and caused it. This is not to say that climate and equity and justice are not important. Of course they are. Just that right now, the two subjects that will drive this vote in the next 26 days are the pandemic and the economy. And they're intersectional, of course, with all these other issues. Who is going to stop this Great Depression and this great pandemic? Trump gives every sign of not knowing what to do. So he is doing things that don't make much sense, even in his own self-interest. What narcissistic impulse caused him to pull the plug on a stimulus deal, which his own Federal Reserve chair says is needed right now? His refusal to debate from separate locations is particularly baffling, saying it's a waste of time. After all, he is the one who needs the debate to make a last-ditch try at changing the direction of this election, which is not going in his favor. His first attempt obviously blew up on him. But why wouldn't he want to take a second chance to throw Biden off? Frankly, Pence actually did a better job than his boss last night at unbalancing his debating partner, which was Trump's goal, remember? Harris, she opened well, making it crystal clear that Trump and Pence had presided over the biggest governmental failure in history, the pandemic. But then repeatedly, Vice President Pence baited Kamala Harris into unproductive arguments like fracking. Oh, I wish they were against fracking. I wish she was as left as Pence tried to paint her. I wish she supported our Green New Deal, not their other green sort of political deal. Anyways, none of that is actually today's challenge. Today's challenge is getting Trump out of the White House before he does something even worse than what he's already done, and electing sane people who will stop the pandemic and fix the economy with our help, which they need. Then we can fight about which new Green Deal to enact. We can fight about whether it's possible to support fracking and rejoin the Paris Climate Accord and do more to combat climate. As Harris said, a Biden administration would probably do. This is a radical moment. But Biden and Harris, as we know, are not radical leaders. They are small and transactional. When we need a big and non-negotiable positions on curbing the pandemic and fixing the economy. Even when they try to sympathize or discuss the economic crisis, it's a couple of canned lines. This is a seismic moment. And I fear that the Biden-Harris campaign are throwing out opportunities to exhibit their recognition of this great crisis. Harris should have used her podium last night to discuss several stories of specific people who have lost businesses, are living in their cars, are taking their children to McDonald's to get Wi-Fi so they can do their homework, who have had loved ones who've died of COVID, who've lost their jobs while suffering COVID. But she got swept away by the politics, by the show. I worry that both sides will now default to the tool each party trusts best: television commercials for the Democrats and voter suppression for the Republicans. Biden and Harris, even with those polls right now, they need to go big, or the fear is folks will stay home. Well, whether you are at home or watching on your laptop from a park bench or some other socially distant setting, we do have a great show today. We have Pam Keith joining us first. She is running to unseat Republican Representative Brian Mast in Florida's 18th Congressional District. This is one of those down ballot races that I keep pointing to, a race that really matters. Whatever you think of the top of the ticket, this is what's going to make the change. Pam Keith is a progressive, and she would be the first Black military veteran in Congress. And later, we have a great panel with swing state, Pennsylvania swing state Representative Rep. Rabb, who is back, and Josh Fox is going to be on to discuss that key issue of fracking and whether or not it was some sort of ploy to win over Pennsylvania or Ohio voters. I don't think so. I think, it was a false move. But here, first off, let's just go through what's at the top of my ticket. My feed. Breaking news. Growing numbers of people are in extreme poverty. Common Dreams reports on the World Bank's findings that by 2021, as many as 115 million people could return to extreme poverty, with up to 35 million people entering the category for the first time. Meanwhile, the reporting adds the combined wealth of the world's billionaires has reached $10.2 trillion. Yes, these facts are bleak, but they remind us that the struggle for working class revolution has to be international in its focus. We have infinitely more in common with the working people of China, Iran, and Poland than we do, of course, with the billionaires of the United States. That is why reading books like the one that Vincent Brevins wrote, and we had him on last week, The Jakarta Method, make a difference. Or Naomi Klein's Shock Doctrine. That's what drives these points home. And if you're interested to learn more about the global fight against the power of capital, we recommend starting there. More on Trump's healthcare because it just gets crazier. So we officially know how much Donald Trump's experimental healthcare would cost the average American. The New York Times ran the numbers, adding the costs of the COVID-19 test, the hospital trip, the stay, and the medications, $100,000. But don't worry, Trump didn't have to pay that money because he didn't put himself at the mercy of the privatized healthcare system. He decided to seek treatment at a government-funded hospital, meaning that his bill was footed by, of course, the taxpayers he supposedly cares so much about. And that wouldn't be a problem if the taxpayers themselves could access that care, and if Trump himself had paid more than $750 in taxes. Oh, and of course, you could cut the costs by heading to the hospital by ambulance instead of Marine One. I'm losing my mind. Last night, Mike Pence used his debate time for many things other than discussing the crisis that threatened American survival today. And of course, Harris did not remind people over and over that was something worth discussing as well. She got baited, but that's another topic. One of these things was not new to the Trump administration, blaming China and the WHO for the U.S. outbreak of coronavirus. NPR provided a fact check, reminding us that as early as January 5th, the WHO was sounding the alarm about the coronavirus and that China's move to share the genetic sequence of COVID-19 came right after. Trump's first acknowledgement of COVID-19 at that point wouldn't come for months. We can't let a racist president outsource the blame for his failure to respond to a public health crisis. The truth is clear. Profit motive kept Trump from addressing COVID-19 and offending his big donors by placing people's interests, including his voters, over the interests of corporations. For that, Trump has nobody to hold responsible but himself. All right, guys, up next, we are going to be talking to Pam Keith from Florida. She is running to unseat Republican Brian Mast. It's going to be a great interview. If you're not already in that chat, get in that chat. Make sure to click like, smash that like, and if you're not already a subscriber, just ping that at the top, ping that little subscribe button, because then you'll know when we go live every day at 3 p.m. To 4 p.m. So make sure to do that. We'll be back right after the break. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I am very excited. It's taken too long, but I've heard so many wonderful things about our next guest. Pam Keith is running for Congress in Florida's 18th Congressional District. She's the Democratic nominee, and she is a veteran. She served in the U.S. Navy as a JAG officer in the 90s, and she toured, Bahrain, all over the country. She is making quite an impact in this race, proving what I think so many of us have been talking about for so long, which is progressives can win. Progressives can win in districts that the traditional establishment says we can't win in, and we're just so happy to have you, Pam. Thanks for joining.
Thank you so much. I've watched your star rise. I saw you in the office. I know you've taken a lot of incoming fodder, but you are so strong, and you are such an important leader in the progressive movement. And so it's just a total delight to be with you.
Thank you so much. But this is about you, so this is your moment. All right, so let's just start with the lay of the land. I mean, you've run for office before, and I think this is very important for folks to understand. It usually takes, the statistics say, it takes a woman 3 times to run and win. And it's hard because there are obstacles along the way when you run as a progressive, as a working person, and as a woman of color. Every step of the way, there are obstacles, and they will just keep throwing them at you. What in you made you, after running before, like this is I'm going to do it this time, and of course, you got the nomination.
I think you just have to ask yourself who you are, right? Because that's more important than what you are. And I think that to whom much is given, much is required. I spent this lifelong journey developing skills and experience and knowledge and credentials and education. And I came to a crossroads in my life where I was just like, I'm working for this big corporation. I'm making the money that I thought I would, and I'm dissatisfied. And I'm asking, why am I dissatisfied? And it comes to me like, this can't be it. This cannot be the entire meaning of my life. This cannot be the impression that I leave behind, is that I made a lot of money and I sort of solved a lot of corporate problems. And I just kind of had this, road to Damascus moment where it's like, look, I want to advocate for the people. That's what I want to do. I'm an advocate. I'm a champion. I'm born that way. So I just want to put all of this to the benefit of the people. And so, once I made that decision, I was just all in, and I would never be satisfied going back to, the corporate life. I just could never do that. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I didn't know anything about politics when I got started. I mean, let's be honest. I was a policy wonk. Like you, I wanted to see these systemic issues addressed. And so I'm thinking like, ooh, I'm going to go run for office. But the problem is politics is really not about policy. As much as we think it is, it's actually about power and patronage and access. That's really what it's about. And so it took a long time for me to just even understand how that works. Because there's a kind of patina that's put in front of you. People will smile at you. You go to the conventions and everybody tells you how great you are and how love you and how fabulous you are and how encouraging they are. But then when it actually comes to a contribution or an endorsement or anything that actually helps, it's just MIA. And you're like, yes. Because you walk away thinking, oh, they like me.
Exactly.
And so you don't understand the game that way. Because I'm such a direct person, something that I don't have subtlety like that. And so it took a long time for me to understand that there was a component of this game that I just sucked at. Right? Like if you put me on a stage.
You mean the dishonest part?
Well, I'm gonna say the nuanced part. Maybe we'll use that word. But I just suck at it. I mean, let's be honest. And you put me on a stage to fire up 5,000 people, I got you. You want to sit in a negotiation and hammer out a piece of legislation, I'm with you. You want me to listen to someone and tell them about, educate them about something that they need to understand about how our government and our country, our foreign policy works, I'm with you. But if you want me to be able to decipher what somebody's really telling me when they actually, when the words are, we think you're great, but what they're really saying is go screw yourself. Like that's the thing that I don't have enough. So I actually this time I did something different. I had somebody on the team who's really good at that component. And I don't know that I would be here but for that member of my team. Now, there were also really, really strong members of the team in other areas, too. I had a stronger general consultant. I had a stronger finance operation. And, of course, it was helpful that I was in COVID because, I could just, hang out in my pajamas and do call time all day. But
call time meaning the thing that candidates have to do to raise money. Even on the progressive side, still have to do it.
You'll have to do it.
Doesn't mean you're not calling the same people. Let's just say that, yeah.
But, but really that was the component that was always a failure for me. And that's the thing that's come around. But even so, there's still a great deal of resistance in believing in the viability of progressivism and believing in the viability of African-American women in particular, despite that our presidential nominee happens to be one, our vice presidential nominee happens to be one. But you ask, what makes me keep coming back? And that is that, I feel like this is my purpose. Right? What better purpose could you put your talent and experience to than making life better for those who suffer? There's really only two components that people need to know about my character. Number one, I love fighting. I enjoy fighting. I'm pugilistic by nature. And
I hear you.
Right? And I'm deeply empathetic.
That's good.
I am absolutely enraged by other people's suffering. It drives me bananas. So those two components kind of meet up in kind of where I am. I like to go to war with folks to do something to stop suffering. So
there's this piece in the Washington Post, and Dorsey, if we have that, can we put it up on screen? They profiled you, and it was really interesting. It was actually, I thought there were some things that were written in there that I like, sort of the process that's never said out loud. The piece, Dorsey, were you able to find the clip? Yeah, we did. Great. So this piece came out, after you won the nomination in August. So it's been, over a month since then. And there's a very famous political operative friend named Steve Shale. He's actually a big Biden supporter, always has been a big Biden supporter. And he was quoted in this piece. And I was actually really surprised because he said that when you ran I believe the first time for Congress, he urged you to kind of run for something more local because the way Florida is, it's not the way, it's the way everybody says this. Florida is that, they need to know you as like a local commissioner of something first. And this, I've heard this a million times, I've heard it myself, other women get it in particular, that you need to run for something a little bit more basic and build your way up. What really kind of blows me away about that argument is that argument doesn't work for the centrists that they pluck out of obscurity or the John Ossoffs of the world. They're totally fine with running these guys with and building up some sort of imaginary resume to justify their run, when it's really just about money. And that's what it's about.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, it's the X's and O's of politics. And remember what I said, it's 90% patronage. It's about, and patronage can be generated by money, right? Like you can get patronage by long-standing relationship, or you can get patronage by being able to offer something that somebody wants. And quite frankly, in the game of politics, most people want the resources to run campaigns, right? So, the cost involved in running a congressional campaign is so daunting. It is so extraordinary that the folks that can, either self-fund or have natural networks of high net worth, it's just 30 times easier for them. And the party is not, the reason they have this favor of people who come with so much money is because it makes it easier for the party too. It means that they can spend less money on this candidate and more money on that candidate. And the concept of a self-funder is just like, it's like that just makes everything easier.
Right.
But, so what happens is that there starts to become the mingling the concept of wealth and value, right? Like they're not exactly the same thing, but they start to get conflated in our politics. All I will say is that, knowing that if tomorrow I need to raise $200,000 for signs and staff and, auto dialers and all of this other thing, the fact that I don't have to spend 4 hours on the phone or 6 hours or 10 hours on the phone trying to raise that money puts me ahead of the game. And that's why it's played the way it is. Now, I will also say something that some other candidates will not admit, which is that we have a self-fulfilling ecosystem in our politics. We have pundits and consultants and talking heads who benefit financially from the system being the way it is. And so they're always triangulating to make sure that we don't change our paradigm, because every cycle more and more money is raised and funneled into these entities, and they've become this entrenched ecosystem. Right. They've also become an impediment to change.
You said something also in this piece about the vortex, and I'm on the board of Matriarch. We talk about that a lot on the show, and one of the things that we talked about in the beginning of Matriarch was how women, you have to prove, and this is on the progressive side too. I mean, a lot of these endorsements, these big endorsements, might bring in a lot of cash to these candidates in the last 2 months or the last month, but it's almost too late. And those endorsements are contingent on other endorsements, reaching other metrics, which are all contingent on how much money you can raise. Okay. And if you are a working class candidate, a woman, you got all these things that you have to prove along the way, and then the magic has to happen after you prove those things on the progressive side. So I love that you said vortex, because I was like, that's it, that's the line.
And it's very simple. You're not going to get the endorsement until you raise money. You're not going to get the money until you get the endorsement. And so that becomes this, like I said, this vortex of viability. And so it's very difficult to break through that. Now, every once in a while, manna from heaven rains down, or your opponent implodes, or, you come up with a model of viability like a Cori Bush or a Jamal Bowman that really, really focused on grassroots organizing. But that was the knock on me. I mean, the knock on me is that I am a vociferous advocate and I am a grassroots organizer. And so a lot of folks just don't like that model because they feel like that's not like team player. And it may not be, but I think we just have to understand, if we are willing to have, and I hear it so often, how much Democrats are willing to be bipartisan and open to our Republican brethren, our conservative brethren. And I just invite the party to also be as open and as embracing of our left-leaning and our progressive brethren too. Like, I just feel like if we're going to be bipartisan, let's be tripartisan. How about because I think we have so much common ground we can build from. So I think that that's one of the things I find most delightful about this particular one, is the degree to which I have been able to find co-allegiance with such a variety of points on our political spectrum. Yes, I'm delighted to have the support of Senator Warren, Working Families Party. And, back in 2018, I was a Justice Dem. Justice Dems are not playing in red to blues this season, but my platform hasn't changed since I was a Justice Dem. So, I consider myself a Justice Dem, if they don't. And, but I've also been endorsed by Seth Moulton and some of the more right-leaning or more center right-leaning. And I base that on the fact that there's so much more that unites us than divides us. And I've said once before, like a lot of the difference between the progressive movement and more the center movement, then we may want the same things, but I think the progressives have a shorter time frame in which to get from point A to point B. And to a certain extent, they're not as tolerant of the system is just like this, or it's just time, or, it's just, they're just less tolerant. They're just less tolerant of that.
Yeah.
And so I say, okay, look, if we all want everybody to have health care, we're at least on the same page. Those folks over there, they're trying to say, hey, you're on your own. So that's enemy. This is not enemy. That's enemy. Over here, we're all about trying to get everybody health care. And if it is majority rule, then it's the job of those who are like-minded to build a majority, and sometimes building majority is coalition.
So it's a great segue into, you're running in Florida. You're running in it includes West Palm, right? This Port St. Lucie,
very small,
of West Palm,
but it's mostly northern of West Palm. So
okay, so it is it's this very strange part of southern Florida that's a little bit more conservative, but very winnable, like red to blue, like you said. Right. Also, of course, we can't bury the lead here. This is a presidential year, and Biden might be making some progress in Florida. So tell me, how is having Biden on the ticket in a pandemic year, running against Donald Trump, who doesn't, his residence is not too far away from your district.
5 minutes from my district.
Exactly. So how does that play into your race? It
plays a lot. It plays a lot because my district is known for massive swings, right? So between, it went 20 points blue in 2014, it went 10 points red in 2016, right?
What?
These are not shifts in population, mind you. There are shifts in attitude and mood and just sort of, so this is one of the districts that is most responsive to what's going on politically, both within the state and within the country. And it has a fairly even distribution between Democrats, Republicans, and non-party affiliates, although it's a smaller portion of non-party affiliates, but it's 160,000 votes that are non-party, which is really big number. And some of them are non-party, but partisan right. Some of them are non-party, but partisan left. Some of them are truly whichever side looks like it's winning. But the biggest shift that happened here is in the votes of people over 65. Hillary Clinton lost that population in our district by 9 points, and Joe Biden is winning that population by 8 points. That is a 17-point turnaround in 4 years. And you ask yourself, how the Sam Hill is that possible? Well, there was some general antipathy towards Hillary, but there was also some misogyny, some serious misogyny baked into that. And when COVID hit, the first place it hit was New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, right? And Donald Trump spent all his time demonizing New York, demonizing New Yorkers, turning his back on the needs of people in the Eastern Seaboard. And I think that is one place where seniors over 65 really got turned off. It's this idea that he was going to pit one state and against another state, and they were Trump states and non-Trump states, and they were going to, and I think that really rubbed them the wrong way. And then you add in his callous disregard for the well-being of people over 65, and then you add in cuts to Social Security and Medicare. And I'm like, you just handed it to me on a platter. Let's go. Because I can make a case all day about that. And we're seeing that have a significant effect all over Florida, but very especially here because we're, the sixth most senior district in the country. And
just for folks who don't know, there's a big snowbird population that moves to Florida when they're seniors, coming from the Eastern Seaboard, New York, Connecticut. And there's also a little anti-Semitism thrown in there too, because
but it depends
on New Yorkers.
Right.
What is that code for?
Well, yeah, exactly. But there's a lot of anti-Semitism baked in everything that Donald Trump does and says, which is so weird, given that. I mean, I don't know. Our district has a very, very beautiful, vibrant, and diverse Jewish community. It runs the political gamut. And you don't think of Boca Raton, you think of Pompano Beach. These are very, very heavy Jewish communities, but they are not politically monolithic at all. Like you can have uber Trumper and on the pro-Israel thing, and then you can have this uber progressive liberal Jewish tradition too. And there's everything in between. But it's just a very interesting diversity of the Jewish diaspora, which is probably represented in this state better than just about anywhere except for maybe like New York. You know, it's just like really, really diverse, and it's interesting. I find it fascinating personally.
You know, on that note, there's also this new law that was passed in Florida, giving felons the ability to vote. Now they have to pay these fees. Do you have any sense of how much it's going to impact this election? I mean, unfortunately, you're not hearing enough nationally about what's being done to fight this off.
Well, see, what they did was, and the thing is, we knew they were going to do this. This is what bothers me the most, is that the night that happened, the night that we won, because I worked so hard to get that thing passed, I called my friend and I said, look, we need to go to a court right now, today, tomorrow, and get a declaratory judgment that enjoins the GOP from encumbering this, because you know they will. And I was said, no, you're overreacting. We double checked the language and triple checked the language. There's no way that they could encumber this. We got it right, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, guys, you need to go to a court while we still have 2 Democrats on the Florida Supreme Court, not Democrats per se, but appointed, and that have been more middle in their rulings, because we knew that they were going to be coming off of the court and that DeSantis was going to be appointing doctrinaire extreme right-wing justices. So I was telling them, guys, now, go now. And, they couldn't figure out the vehicle to get in front of something before there's something to sue about, right? And I was like, you can still go and ask for a declaratory judgment. The court can just tell you no, but then you're tying up the resources of the state, right, of the legislature. It's like offense being your best defense, if you will. And they didn't. And so, of course, the beginning of that next session, boom, oh, you need to pay fees and fines. Now, it's one thing to say you have to pay a fine, because when you are given a fine, I make $500 restitution, you now know you have to pay $500. But fees are these hidden costs to just the prosecutor, the court reporter, the bailiff, things that are not typically assessed to you. So the only way you know what your fees are is if you get a bill, an invoice for the fee. The way that they encumbered this was to create an administrative hurdle that just bogs down your process so that you can't find out what you owe, let alone pay it off. We've got all the money in the world to pay these fees. What we don't have is the invoices of what the fees are so they can actually get paid.
Unreal.
And it's just total. And the thing that drives me crazy is that every time Dick and Harry knows what the intent of the GOP is, we know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. We know that they know it. We know what they're doing. And everybody seems to be okay with an entire political party taking on as its principal strategy voter suppression.
That's literally, that was in my opening. It was exactly that. Is that you want to know what their only strategy right now is voter suppression. And for the Democrats, it's campaign ads. And those are the 2 strategies. Nothing in between. They have exhibited this for 40 years now, more than that, but as a science, they have figured out how to use process administration. They talk about their attacks on bureaucracy. They understand bureaucracy more than anybody does and use it against working people in every way and form.
Right, and it's the moral bankruptcy of it all. The reason we had such a debacle with our unemployment benefit system in Florida, which, by the way, is still extremely badly broken, is because they intended to be an administrative nightmare to dissuade people from actually accessing their benefits. Because if it becomes frustrating enough, you just say, screw it, I'll go do something else. And they think that this will encourage you to go get a job, because they think that all joblessness is, self-inflicted or a sign of laziness. And so in order to create a disincentive, they just made it so hard to access those benefits that you can't get them at all. So but of course they wouldn't, come out and say that.
Of course not. Of course not. Right?
But that is the moral bankruptcy of that way of thinking generally. And I just.
So before we wrap up, we have a couple more minutes. You are running against a Republican on the spectrum of, 2 Republicans. Okay, explain that in a second. But the incumbent, of course, is a Republican. On the spectrum of Republicans, these red to blue districts right now, I've been in several of them in the last few months and have watched the ads, and I'm really surprised by how, at least in rhetoric, maybe not affiliation to Trump, but in rhetoric, how aligned a lot of these Republicans are with the most extremist elements of the Republican Party in a way that I really haven't seen that happen in these swing districts before. Usually you get a more centrist kind of message to appeal to everybody. What's happening in your district?
It's not so much what's happening in my district. It's what's happening within the Republican Party. The Republican Party no longer exists. There's just the Trump Party. And everything is measured by the degree to which you are loyal to Trump. So if you want to have any kind of viability in this party, you have to be constantly asserting your fidelity to Donald Trump, right? Because that's the only thing they will not tolerate is disloyalty to Trump. They will tolerate any other kind of transgression but that one. The problem is that there are a whole lot of Republicans who don't feel loyal to Trump, don't want to be loyal to Trump, and want to see their old school Republican worldview reflected in their elected officials. And so they also try to sound like they're center and they're old school Republican and they're, the comfort of the New Jersey Republican, like they're trying to be Steve King and Steve King at the same time, right? If you know what I mean by that reference, and I think you do. But the incumbent here also has this challenge that there's a third person on our ballot, because in Florida we have closed primaries. So non-party candidates go automatically to the November ballot. So we actually have a non-party and we have the incumbent. Now, it's not that the guy that's non-party is truly non-party. He's a Republican. But he's one of these letter ... you know what I mean? Letter of the alphabet with the, he's one of these extreme conspiracy theorists. And
yes.
So
the big one, guys. We have to be careful what we say now, because
we're not going to say it, but that group that shall not be named, that is completely off the horizon of rationality. He's one of those people, and he's a super, super Second Amendment. And the thing that's the issue between them is that for about 15 seconds, my opponent pretended like he supported an assault rifles ban. And for them, that is such a disloyalty and such a betrayal of their movement that he got primaried last cycle by two guys, but they were stupid because they ran as Republicans and they got, they got eaten up by the machine, but they came up between them with 15,000 votes. This guy was like, why would I try to fight you in a primary? I'll just go to the general election ballot. And if he pulls another 15,000 votes, it's over for this guy.
I was going to say, are they just splitting the ticket, or is there some sort of secret madness I'm not getting?
The ballot says, the incumbent, me, and the other guy. So there's two names on the ballot there. And it's just one of these things where you're like, there's absolutely zero chance that anybody would consider that third guy. So he's only pulling from the right. Like that, I know. But it's an interesting dynamic because everybody's starting to feel like the incumbent is a phony. We feel like he's a phony from the left, but they're also starting to feel like he's a phony from the right. And that starts to destabilize quite a bit. And just the general mood of just sick with Trump and Trumpism and the constant chaos and the constant lies and the constant disconnection from reality and the divisiveness. They're just sick of it. And I think people who are sick of it are like, we're voting all the thumbs out. Y'all going. So I think there's a really, really good, strong possibility of winning this thing.
From your mouth to the universe's ears and back. Cori Bush, of course, has endorsed you. This is great, a great sign. I trust her judgment on pretty much everything. So, this is definitely a race that you have to be watching in an area of the country. Just in general, we're probably going to be watching as we do every year since 2000.
I just want to add one thing real quick.
Sure.
I don't know if we have time, but one of the quirks of this particular seat is that if it flips from red to blue, it literally changes control of the delegation. And it's the congressional delegation that elects the electors, right? So you know how they had that whole lawsuit about faithless electors?
Yes.
It's about sending people up there who would vote in contrary to what the actual election result is in your state. And the Republicans are thinking that they can do some things to try to keep Trump in power with these faithless electors. And if my seat goes blue, that just puts the kibosh on that altogether.
Amazing. Pam Keith, I'm so inspired that you've continued to run and that you didn't listen to the naysayers saying that no, you should run for this other thing, that you could use your experience in life, because I do think it really does. Your personal experiences are valuable in these races in particular, and I cannot wait to see you in Congress and to hear your voice in Congress and to see your fight in Congress and your empathy in Congress. So check out Pam Keith. We'll put her website down in the information section on YouTube, and we'll tweet you out as well. But thank you, and good luck in the next 26 days. Hopefully they'll decide it on election night, and you could just go on vacation for a little bit.
Well, if my district flips, Florida will in fact go blue. It is the tie-breaking district of Florida. So if you got a couple extra bucks, send them our way. I'm a big fan of grassroots fundraising, and I'm very proud that even our local newspapers admitted that my fundraising reflects these values. That I'm not taking money from oil and gas and all this. Thanks.
Thank you, Pam. All right. Hope to see you soon after you're elected.
Have a good one. Thank you so much.
You too. Take care. All right, guys, make sure to smash that like button and click subscribe if you haven't already. We will be back in 1 second with our panel, Josh Fox and Representative Chris Rabb. Thanks for watching and listening to The Nomiki Show. But remember to click like and subscribe on YouTube, and please share on social media. If you're not already a patron, please join us for as low as $5 a month on patreon.com/The Nomiki Show for early and special content. That investment makes a huge difference. We are not corporate media raking in the dough. It's really you guys that are keeping us going. So please consider being a patron. And to our current patrons, thank you so much. We are incredibly grateful to you. We also now have swag. So check us out on thenomikishow.com to get your mugs, your totes, and your stickers. Welcome back to the Nomiki Show. I am already loving this panel. I'm looking at these smiling faces. We're going to talk about another swing state, Pennsylvania, which Representative Chris Rabb, of course, is representing the 200th district of Pennsylvania. Well, I'll say the most progressive representative. Can I say that? I think I can say that. He's like, yeah, of course, in Pennsylvania. And of course, Josh Fox, who resides in Pennsylvania, is, I believe, in Pennsylvania right now.
Yes, I am.
And has worked in Pennsylvania. So, Rep. Rabb, you're on mute right now, but we're gonna talk a little bit about the debate last night, what hasn't been said already, but most specifically around an issue that infuriates Josh Fox for sure. His life mission for the last decade and a half or more has been around banning fracking. And fracking, of course, is a key issue in Pennsylvania. So I just want to start off with Rep. Rabb. Kamala Harris, do we have the clip? Actually, let's play the clip real quick. Of Kamala Harris. Let's play the clip. So, of course, Kamala Harris on stage last night was just decided to say it over and over and over again and then tweet about it. And then, I don't know, there's probably going to be a T-shirt with it on there. And they're going to sell, bumper stickers now. It's like, because everything that they repeat turns into some gimmick and some, campaign fundraising tool. All right, let's play that clip.
Please.
Okay. Joe Biden will not raise taxes on anyone who makes...
Oh. Just kidding. What happened?
Don't play it. Don't play it. We know what's in it. Don't give him more. I'm kidding. That was the clip. That's the right clip. She's about to say Joe Biden will not ban fracking.
Yeah, he starts with the taxes. Anyways, she said over and over, we all saw it, okay, that Joe Biden will not ban fracking. And of course, Pence tried to paint her as somebody who is against fracking. Like, how dare you, you radical? So Rep. Rabb, man, is this what Pennsylvania wants? Was this all about a ploy to swing Pennsylvanian voters?
It is such a misfire, and I got to tell you, I'm on my government iPhone, so I can't talk about campaigns or candidates, but I can talk about fracking. We are the second largest producer of fracked gas. It's not natural gas. It's very unnatural. It's fracked gas. We're the second largest producer in the country, and it doesn't create a lot of jobs for Pennsylvanians. It creates jobs for people outside of Pennsylvania. It creates a lot of jobs that are non-union jobs. It creates a lot of jobs that are not good for the workers themselves or where they seek to frack. I visited Susquehanna County, and I know, Josh, you are the longstanding expert on this, but as someone who represents an aggressively crunchy blue dot in Pennsylvania, I had to get out of my blue bubble and visit the people who are experiencing rare cancers, Ray Kimball, Craig Stevens, other folks who are actually conservative Republicans who oppose fracking. Conservative Republicans, they came to visit me in Harrisburg 2 weeks ago. They look like they're right out of ZZ Top. And they talk about all the folks on the left who are doing really important work around saving our environment. And so it's a misfire when any candidate talks about saving fracking like it's saving jobs, helping local communities. It does the exact opposite. It's absurd. It's so easy for anyone to pivot and say, we don't even have to ban fracking because fracking will ban itself. It's doing that poorly. Wall Street is going to bail from it, and I'm no fan of Wall Street, but Wall Street's walking away from it. As soon as we have utility scale battery storage that comes close to the cost of fracking, fracking is dead. So fracking is going to die on its own. I would love to kick it into the grave myself through legislation, but if I'm not able to, fracking is like the fax machine or Blu-ray, or let's think of some other things. Help me out, Josh. But it's not long for this world, both from an economically sustainable standpoint. More and more people care, like Josh, the work he's been doing, care about our environment and say it's not worth it. And we also have renewable energy that when we have the right people in the administration, they will provide incentives and subsidies the way they're providing it for dirty fuel for generations. And once that happens, we won't be having this conversation again because it'll be a thing of the past. We're not talking about Blu-ray. We're also not talking about marriage equality more because it's the law of the land, right? And so once people realize it's dead, we're moving on. And that's what's going to happen with regard to renewable energy. But to hear folks say we're not going to ban fracking as though that's a bad thing is really disheartening because it's just bad policy. And there's so many powerful ways that anyone who knows the basics of environmental and energy policy could have pivoted to make some really good points that the majority of Americans would embrace.
Yeah,
that's right.
So
that's an interesting point, and I want to ask you about this, Josh, because we were debating last night over text message. Actually, we're on a chat, and we totally dominated the chat, and just
nobody was after three sentences. People were like, "I'm out of here."
But I have this theory. Okay, let me float it, and then I'd love to hear. So this was a misstep. It seemed to be a misstep, and I think part of that is because you have Kamala Harris, who really hasn't done environmental work. I mean, she's from California. You'd think that with California on fire, she wouldn't have a deeper understanding of the human impact of fracking. And that is also indicative of and yes, I get that they have a plan, Josh. We'll talk about that in a second. But it just shows that they're not connected to the roots around these issues. And that Josh, you always say the Green Tea Party members, right? That they're not feeling what's actually happening. Yeah. And as a result, what really kind of blew me apart was they don't even really need to say that to win any voters in Pennsylvania. It was like a consultant said that to them and said, do this.
Absolutely.
You guys are winning by, what are you talking about? Just talk about the economy. That's it. Just talk about the economy. Go.
I think you're right that the culprit is political consultants who make money by not paying attention to the people. And the people in Pennsylvania don't want fracking. The majority of people in Pennsylvania, 52 to 48, the last poll, are not in favor of fracking. They're in favor of curtailing fracking or banning it outright. And the vast majority of Democrats, right? So let me just say that I've been talking about fracking for as long as Bernie Sanders has been talking about socialism. That's a joke, but it's almost as long.
You're not that old, Josh.
I've been talking about fracking since 2008 when I first broke the story in my film Gasland, which premiered in 2010 at the Sundance Film Festival. So for Bernie Sanders to go out and campaign for Joe Biden when Joe Biden is saying, I beat the socialist, is kind of like what I feel right now, having to go out and campaign for Biden and Harris when they're saying they're not going to ban fracking. So I'm going to do something that's very odd on a political talk show. First of all, let me just say it's a real honor to be on with Nomiki and with Rabb. Thank you so much for all of your great work in PA. We've got to make sure that PA comes back into the blue fold this time around. But what I'm going to say is this. On a political talk show, I'm going to actually tell you the truth, which is
this is the one,
nuanced,
if you're going to do it.
This is going to be a nuanced truth telling. So please just stay with me here, okay? The bottom line actually is that the plan that they put forward, Biden and Harris, does actually ban fracking. It puts fracking to bed. It gets rid of fracking. Now, the top experts in the country on this, and I count myself as one of them, but I'm certainly not the only one of them, will tell you that America, because of Barack Obama, mind you, got so in bed with the fracking industry that our energy infrastructure is so dependent on fracking that it's going to take 6 to 8 years to get us off of the fracking dependency that we're in. So even if we came out tomorrow, like Bernie Sanders, and said, we're banning fracking, the process would still be a transition. We know that. Any intelligent person will tell you that. Now, so their plan actually does that. It says we're not going to have any new electricity generation from fossil fuels in 15 years, which means that the new fracking power plants that are being proposed, gone. Fracking pipelines, gone. All that stuff, which, by the way, is happening a lot in PA, right? 35 miles as the crow flies from where I'm sitting here in Wayne County, right next door to Susquehanna County. You're talking about 6 new frac gas power plants that are being proposed, and some of them are operational now, creating massive air pollution. This is a huge problem. And as we know, fracking just contaminates water, contaminates the air, it promotes health problems, and it does create jobs. Those jobs are oncologists. Those jobs are people who test your water for carcinogens. Those jobs are people who are asthma specialists. Those are the jobs that fracking creates, right? Those jobs are the people to take care of the sick workers like Randy Moyers, who has radioactive poisoning because he's dealing with radioactive fluids. There is no way to make fracking safe. There's no way to justify fracking. Now, what is actually happening here is, as Nomi said, some political consultant whispered in there and said, well, people in Pennsylvania like fracking. And any perceived extreme position...
Hang on, what? Can I just stop for a second? That political consultant probably also represents the
fracking industry. For sure.
Probably.
Now, the problem is that this, I'm almost done, is that that's not true, okay? But any perception of Harris and Biden at the moment of them taking a quote-unquote extreme position, the Green New Deal, which of course is on their website and it's in the framework for their climate plan, but a $2 trillion climate plan, which I just spent an hour with several Jeff Goodell, right, talking about how great the Biden climate plan is, which it is absolutely great. Now they're going to shy away from the public perception that anything that they're doing is quote unquote extreme. This is a political calculation, and it causes them to punch left, and it's maddening. It causes them to say things like, we're not going to ban fracking, or we don't support socialism, or blah, 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 blah. And I'm frankly sick of it. It makes me nauseous. It makes me feel like I'm being punched in the stomach. But let me just tell you this. In 2008, when nobody had ever heard of fracking, the fact that it's a litmus test and it's a huge issue in this campaign is amazing to me, an incredible progress of our movement. And it also goes to show you one other thing, that I have not gotten a call from CNN. I have not gotten a call from MSNBC. I've not gotten a call from Fox News. I've not gotten a call from anyone to talk about this. And I'm the person who broke the story on this and the leading expert on fracking worldwide and internationally. And the reason why is because the media is also in the pocket of the oil and gas industry. And those people, and the political consultants, and those people don't want the actual truth out. They don't want me to come out and say, well, Kamala Harris is actually not really being truthful at that moment. Because then the Republicans will pick that up and run with it and say, Kamala Harris is lying.
Right. Well, I mean,
it's a distinction without a difference.
Exactly.
It's a distinction without a difference, because you don't have to ban fracking, like Josh said. If you just say no more new stuff, right? We're not moving it forward.
I think that language is empowering. Their political calculations are saying that they're going to win over more undecided votes by saying the middle ground position than they are going to benefit from enthusiasm on the progressive side going for them, because we're already doing that, right? Let's just say all the progressives are all going Biden, 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 and they've got us locked up, and that's the truth. So they're trying to get votes in another place, whether that's sincere or not.
But it's not, I mean, I think what's frustrating for folks who've done real on-the-ground coalition building, organizing, both of you have just talked about that. I mean, we've all done work and found common ground with actual Republicans on issues that, the consultants probably, either they do know and they just have their own interests in mind, or they're just so freaking out of touch that they have no sense of what the actual undecided centrists care about, which is usually taxes. I mean, it's just, that's kind of what it comes down to. That's literally it. It's just I don't want to pay more taxes. That's it.
It could have been fracking. It could have been football. Who cares? Mike Pence would have come out and said, you're lying. And Kamala Harris would have said, no, I'm not lying. Do you know what I mean? It was that kind of situation.
Too easily.
And I think a politician like a Bernie Sanders would have come out and been much more deft at just saying, look, we've got to fight climate change. We've got to protect our environment. We've got to do all of these things. We are for protecting the American people, and just not gotten baited into saying we're not going to ban fracking and tweeted it and all this kind of nonsense that's happening. But that's part of the tone deafness that we've been battling with these centrists and moderates forever, right?
So real quick, guys, I have one more question before we wrap up the show, but do you guys have time to stick around for a little bit extra for our patrons?
I can do a tiny bit more. I'm trying to submit my new film to Sundance, so I'm
forget that, Josh.
Right.
You got to stay on the show for 5 more minutes.
I can do a tiny bit, but I don't want to dominate the conversation. I've already.
It's all good. Okay, just one quick question. I would love to ask Rabb is, as much as you can, because again, just so folks know, when you're using a government phone, you have to stay out of the politics side. But lobbying happens a lot, and you have crazy laws in Pennsylvania where lobbyists can just buy a lawmaker a Tesla, as you've said many times. How significant is the fracking natural gas lobby in Pennsylvania?
It's extraordinary. We are the largest full-time state legislature in the country. There are 253 of us. There are more lobbyists that represent oil and gas than all the members of the Pennsylvania General Assembly. They are everywhere. They give a lot of money, and they don't care what your party affiliation is.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
They give money out, and there are no campaign contribution caps in Pennsylvania. I've said this every time I've been on your show. You could give me $1 billion, and it's legit, to my campaign. As long as it's not a corporate check, as long as you're a citizen, you can give me as much money as you want for as long as you want. If you were a lobbyist, you could give me cash. It's the Wild West in Pennsylvania. It's crazy. Now, the point about fracking and frack gas and so forth is this is not a partisan issue, because there are plenty of Democrats who either believe that fracking is a bridge energy source, which is it's a burning bridge, or they don't care because they get money from lobbyists, right? Mm-hmm. And so they're cynical. I have one of the most popular bills in the legislature. It's the 100% renewable energy bill that gets us to 100% renewable energy by 2050. I believe we can do it before that. But I have people, Democrats, who are on my bill, co-sponsors, who support fracking. Because how extraordinary, this is a shout out to all the young folk who care very much about environmental justice. Mm-hmm. They're afraid of them. So they said, well, let me get on Rep. Rabb's bill, so then I'll look cool and I'll look green.
It's kind of like what Kamala did, right? She got on the Green New Deal and
she
Medicare
also
for all.
Said she was going to ban. She was out for a ban on fracking. Now, when she said it, there was a hint that members of Congress, as Rush Holt once said to me, the only member of Congress that won Jeopardy. Rush Holt once said to me, members of Congress are not experts. Yeah. We don't actually know a lot. I mean, and think about all of the incredible knowledge that it takes to amass 10 years of understanding renewable energy or fracking or the wind industry. Oh, and by the way, I'm speaking on the telephone that the wind industry gave me in the lavish TV studio that the wind industry furnished for me. And outside is parked my Lamborghini that was given to me by Elon. I'm kidding, of course. The idea is that people they don't always know what they're talking about, right? So when they're talking about fracking, if Kamala Harris is from California, it's a hot button issue in California. But the Californians seem to keep fracking, right? These are very intricate and very complicated things to negotiate your way out of. You're talking about the entire underpinning of our civilization, right? This phone right now, whether I want it to or not, because I'm in PA, is being powered by a frack gas power plant 35 miles from here, and that's a terrible situation. It harms the people in those communities, but it also
my electric
puts us in
vehicle
a
right
dependent-
here. Josh.
Yeah, it puts us in a dependent situation, right? The problem is that it takes a while to untangle that. We have to be sincere about how complicated that entanglement is. American television and the average American voter IQ on these issues does not account for a lot of nuance. It just doesn't. That's the problem. That's we have to, and we trying to expand that nuance by speaking about these things honestly on programs like this.
Hold that thought. For those of you who do want more nuance, I have some really big questions. I think these are important questions, and we'll have. Chris will Rep Rabb will be back on next week. Josh will talk about this a little bit more, hopefully on a one-on-one.
I love
we'll
talking
do
to you. I can't
whole conversation about this. But if you want to hear more of this, we're going to talk about what the geopolitical this show's running, and I'm just so proud of what the conversations we're having right now. So we're going to wrap it up. Special thanks to Bob and Billy, the mods, of course, and everybody in the live chat, and our new live chat moderator choking on Ash's 6. What a name. And they said that they need a nickname for me. I have a lot of nicknames. I don't like any of them, but okay. All right, guys. We will see you tomorrow, same time, same place, for Femme Fridays. And for patrons, we'll see you in a few seconds.
All right. Thanks.
1 second, guys.
Oh, you're twisting.